So I'm not going to lie, I wasn't sure how this conversation would come across, but I'm pretty sure it's going to go down not just okay, but pretty well, because it is like husband and wife spilling the tea, real talk behind the scenes. Like you guys are going to get to see inside our marriage and inside our parenting in our own, like these four walls. And I actually think we need to have more conversations like this. So I have Alex back on, and he's my husband, obviously. And we're talking about what we wish we knew when we had kids that we know now. So this was his stroke of genius. This is his brilliant idea. And I was like, that's actually really good, because imagine if we had learned all these little moving parts and pieces, and obviously emotional intelligence, before we had kids or right as they were really young. Oh my goodness, so much stress and conflict and arguments would have been avoided, and we probably just would have, been able to have a lot more joy in our relationship and as parents. So anyway, fast forward to now, this is what we know, and we were pretty like open and real and raw. We didn't really hold back. Alex he's like supernatural, as in natural and really open and authentic, and he just talks really easily. So I hope you guys enjoy that, because I'm impressed. This is, I think, maybe the third time he's come on the podcast. I don't know. So we talked about how we know how to give the other person space when they are stressed or dysregulated or really overwhelmed. Also how not to take the other person's emotions personally, and how not to take your kids' emotions and behavior personally. That was huge. We also talked a bit about, like, Alex spoke about how he started to really take accountability to resolve the issue, that whatever was happening, with us or with the family, rather than like pointing the finger and blaming the kids for being loud or me for not communicating. Like, he really started to kind of shift his focus inward. Also, my journey into learning how to actually communicate openly and clearly and honestly, and also to be able to ask for help, because that is something that I've had to really work on. And also I took things personally all the time, and I think that gets so many of us into trouble. It was actually also really cool, because Alex said that he really liked how I had taught him some powerful concepts of emotional intelligence, like strike when the iron is cold, which I talk a lot about, the emotional hijack, and how that, if we know about it, it can avoid conflict and arguments. So I felt really proud. There's a part in there as well where we both talk about, but he kind of led the conversation about how we cannot let problems build up to such a place where it creates resentment and anger and then conflict and arguments and yelling. Instead, how to kind of diffuse them and nip them in the bud and address them early. I'm not saying, by the way, that we're perfect. I don't know if we mentioned that in the episode, but I want to kind of maybe put in a disclaimer now that gives you guys this real view of us. Obviously, we were really honest in the conversation, but also we do have moments where we're not perfect and I take things personally, or, he gets frustrated. It happens. So as long as you know all of that, I still think this is such a good conversation, because, from what we learn and what we know and what we implement with emotional intelligence, there is so much less snapping, there is so much less snowballing, and we get on top of things early. So this is why I'm such a massive advocate for emotional intelligence. I hope you guys really enjoy the episode. Please give us feedback. I think we mentioned at the end, ask us your questions, send them in. If you're watching on YouTube, you can just comment them down below. If you're listening on the podcast, send me an email. We'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. Just quickly, I want to say thank you in advance for bearing with us with the background noise. We have the air conditioning going in here, and I did my absolute best to remove that background noise, but it's going to sound a little bit different. So anyway, that's all I could do. I apologize. Okay, enjoy. Okay, just quickly before we begin, I want to acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, their elders and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. Okay, guys, I'm a little bit nervous. Let's just jump in. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, everyone. Okay, we're back. Alex had a great idea just this afternoon that popped into his head, and I really like it, so I'm going to roll with it. It is us talking about what things we wish we would have known before we had kids. Is that right?
Yeah. What we know now, that would be useful when we had kids.
Okay, because we are 10 years into our parenting journey. Oh, that sounds so crazy. 10 and a half.
Yep. It's flying.
So technically we're 10 and a half year old parents.
Can you see all the grey hairs?
Yeah, you've got some nice, see this section? Wait, no. Yeah. The other side. I mean, it's both sides.
I don't know about my grey hairs.
You got some George Clooney stuff happening. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to throw it over to you first. I have written notes, but I would like to hear your...
I don't write notes.
Yeah, you're not a note writing person.
I just make it up.
Tell us how you do that. No, okay. What's something that we do that we know now that you wish?
Well, EQ, obviously, is one of the major things. Let's get that out of the way. Being able to communicate with your partner. And
should have written that.
Yeah, being able to kind of communicate with yourself and understand your emotions and how you're feeling. You know, thinking that you should be able to do this and you should be able to handle things and, you know, I'm a parent now, whatever, putting all that pressure on yourself and not listening to how you feel can kind of snowball out of control. So I think, obviously EQ is very, very important, but obviously being able to communicate how you feel to your partner and being able to help each other carry the load and give each other space, which is like, I'm feeling great. And you're like, I'm feeling like shit. So you kind of seesaw back and forth and try to help each other out.
We don't really swear on my podcast. I keep it pretty clean. I will beep that out. I'm sure it's fine on YouTube. I don't know.
We'll find out.
I usually say, I don't know. What do I say? I swap it out for a word like fudge cake. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Communicating. You're much better at that, I think, than me. Well, yeah, you're better now than you were before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that actually has made a huge difference, I think, in our home overall, because when I know that you're feeling stressed or you're tired from a long day at work or like stuff going on, now I know to make accommodations, which means usually like keep the kids occupied or keep them up the front, put them, watching TV, that kind of thing, rather than they go around to his computer and like they'll bug him or ask him questions or say, can you play or can you do this? Sometimes that's fine. Other times, when you just don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
So that would have made you very like stressed. And now I get it, because you say like, babe, I've had a day or whatever you say. And so that probably has avoided many like, blow ups or like conflict with the kids. And because they get it when I say dad's tired or he's just come home from work, like just wait. I think that helps.
I think it's also important. I think it's probably the biggest point I can make, if I could think like being a new parent again, is like redirecting the blame or taking responsibility. And what I mean by that is when we get emotionally hijacked, it's very easy for us to blame other people for how we're feeling, like the baby crying or the nappies being changed or the lack of sleep. Like it's easy to blame it on the kid. But at the end of the day, it's you that aren't able to handle it. Like you can't handle it. It's too much for you, which is understandable when you're taking sleep deprivation, all that sort of stuff. But if you redirect it and realize that it's a you problem and you're struggling to handle with it, it's not the external forces, their fault, then it kind of puts things in perspective, saying, what can I do with me to resolve this issue versus like, how do I make this kid stop crying? Like, how do I, you know what I mean? Like instead of directing it externally, which it's very hard to control, especially a child, they're going to cry no matter what you do, bring it internal, realizing, why do I feel this way? Why am I tired? Like, how can I handle this? And, if you need to get help from outside, like people often don't, but I'd highly recommend that you do, saying, hey, right now I've had no sleep for 3 days. This is too much for me. I need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something very difficult, especially for us mums. At least I can like attest to, because I have so many conversations with mums, of course, that we are not great at communicating that. And obviously sometimes, when you're in the thick of it and you can't see the wood for the trees,
yes,
so to speak, like you just don't know that you're in that spiral.
And that's why like kind of practicing and learning what we know now is important. So you can catch it early and be like, whoa, I'm not handling this well. instead of blaming the external.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think, go.
I think it's also an ego thing. Like, we don't want to show people that we can't do it and we need help. But, 99% of people are very understanding, especially when you take responsibility for it. It's like, hey, I'm having a really hard time here. I just need a break for a day. I just need a break for 2 hours. Can you help me? Most people are nice and kind, especially if you surround yourself with the right people. They're going to help you for like 2 hours, 3 hours,
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a big one, I think. Both of us communicating to the other how we're feeling and what we need. I think I was probably, I can only speak for myself. I don't want to say I was worse than you, but I know that's something that I have struggled with and just not, felt comfortable doing. And it's not because you are not approachable, despite the beard and the and the resting angry face. But like, it just wasn't in my nature. My mum is super hardworking, and she always was. And my dad basically had 2 jobs for most of our childhood. He worked as a teacher, and then he would do repairs and carpentry and stuff at the school. And then he opened his own business, and that was carpentry and building. And so Mum was the one who did all the lawns. She mowed the lawns, and she like hosed the pathway, and she did everything out, but the quote unquote man jobs, she did those at home, and then all the other nurturing stuff. So I probably just like absorbed that, and also, just don't like asking for help or communicating how I feel, because it's, it was embarrassing, and I felt like I should be able to have it all together. And so that's definitely...
I think like me growing up, I saw a bit of a different story. Like, my parents were amazing parents. I wouldn't want any other parents, No parents are perfect, but, that's just the way life is. We're not perfect. I know my parents, being like their background, didn't really express their emotions well to each other. And that led to problems down the line, right? So I know now that instead of having the problems build up and then pushing it onto you, like, we could diffuse the situation way earlier if you or I say, I feel stressed today. I don't know why, or you do know why. I'm super stressed. I just want you to be aware of that.
Ooh.
Like, I just let you know in advance, or you let me know in advance, that you're like on the edge, and it's nobody else's fault. Just a bad day, probably wrong side of the bed type scenario. And we're like, okay, I get it. I'm not going to push too hard today. I'm going to give you some space. I'm going to help a little bit more, or whatever it is. But kind of catching it early, expressing how you feel, definitely, especially for us, leads to no arguments for that day.
Yeah.
Other where we'd hold it in, and then I would snap, and you're like, why are you snapping at me? And we're like, oh, that's it. It just snowballs out of control. So getting on top of it early, and be like, hey, I don't feel that great. Like, give me a moment to understand what's going on and why, or let me get over it, and then we can just get back into the flow of life. Like, if you have that skills when you have a newborn, super useful. Like, I'm tired, I've had no sleep. Don't blame the other partner, and just say, hey, just need some help. Let's see what we can do. They might turn around and say, hey, I'm also tired, and I've also had no sleep, and I have these other stresses. And we're like, all right, like, let's get through this together.
Yeah.
Instead of like start blaming each other, why aren't you helping more? Because they're probably going through their own personal struggles too. You don't see everything that someone's going through.
Actually, so what you just said with going through, people go through their own personal struggles. I think I didn't realize a lot of that at the start. I often took things super personally. And like, if you were busy and I was tired or stressed, like, and I didn't communicate it, then I was like, why isn't he helping me? He's so selfish. He just comes home from work and then sits on the couch or whatever that was. But like, I would take any of your behavior. Like, let's say you went to make a cup of coffee or something, or I'd be like, well, where's my coffee? Or like, why isn't he, plus you guys know, I probably talked about this on the podcast. I have this like underlying anxious tendency.
Yeah.
So
keep in mind, that's when you're not feeling great, like, 'cause that's not you every day. That's you when you're on edge,
Yeah.
And like, you wouldn't express that to me, and I wouldn't express it to you because we weren't good at it back then. But it'd be way different. Yeah.
I'm much better now at not taking things personally from him, but also the kids. because we know that kids are going to have their meltdowns. They're going to complain. They're going to say like, you're the most unfair parent in the world. Like even things,
I hate you.
They sound super personal, like it's directed at you kind of thing. But even then, this is something I'm sure I've talked about tons in the past because it was so profound for me that I realized, like, even when your kids are like calling you names or whatever, or directing it at you, it's actually got nothing to do with you. It's their inability to handle the disappointment of not having the fifth cookie, or like the lack of emotional regulation when they're tired, hungry, exhausted, blah blah blah. Like it's coming out at you. Like, yes, it's not the best. I'm not saying it's like fine, let them just throw daggers at you and treat you like crap, but I stopped now taking it personally, and I see it for what it is, which makes it a whole lot better. Which
is like half the time they're hungry or need a nap. Like, once they've eaten and had a nap, they're like, I'm sorry.
They're like these little gremlins.
And they don't understand why they're angry. Mm-hmm. So they'll find, like, this is the reason I'm angry is because mum's wearing a pink shirt. Ah! You know, I hate you. Like, they just don't understand why their emotions are going haywire. And they start pointing at external things, and it lands on the parents half the time. But really, most of the time, like especially now, we tell our kids, what you said hurt my feelings. I don't want to talk to you right now. Like, you're out of control. Get something to eat. Like, we kind of we understand that it's just a moment in time. So instead of like really attacking them and saying, how dare you speak to me that way? That you're a this, that, we're like, this is just a wave that we know that their emotions are completely hijacked, and their circuits are just wired. How many times do they just apologize to us afterwards? We could be the villain. We could actually turn it around and be the villain and really give them a reason to hate us. If we let that consume us and control our emotions, we can damage the relationship, even if it's just a little bit, right? If we could just weather that storm and realize that it's them and they're just hungry and sleepy, the large majority of the time now, once we tell them what they say, how it affects us, they'll come back and apologize to us.
Yeah.
Instead of hating us more.
You're so good at this. You can just take over. So the emotional hijack is something that you just mentioned. And of course, I had no idea about that when we had kids, because I only really discovered emotional intelligence 2018, 2019, which is 5 years ago. And so our oldest was 5 because he's now 10, and our youngest was 2. So when they were little, I did not understand how, exactly what you were just talking about, when our emotions run high and our kids do, we become unreasonable because we've lost access to that reasonable part of our brain. And so of course we're going to like say things and do things that usually we would never want to say or do. They'd be hurtful. Yeah.
Or mean.
Yeah, we wouldn't mean. Exactly. Like I would think, he gets to go to work all day, and I've been stuck with the baby or the 2 kids or something, and then he like wanders in and he's tired and sits on the couch, or I don't know, you relax. And then I would be creating all these stories, get myself worked up to be emotionally hijacked, and then probably I'm not that snappy a person overall. I'm a more passive aggressive. Wouldn't you agree?
Totally, yeah. I should speak instead of nodding.
You'd be
yes.
He's nodding, and I'm like, I would. He'd probably be like, what is wrong?
Well,
and
I'll be tired
like,
too. Then I'd snap back.
Yeah, and then it goes like this, like up.
Why didn't you tell me you needed help?
I've been at work all day. Yeah, no. So having known that, the emotional hijack and what that does to us, and that's essentially it's your brain and it's your nervous system, your body doing it for you. Like no one chooses to be emotionally hijacked and then get into an argument and then hurt the other person, and you know what I mean? Like that would have been good to know. Yeah,
a lot of the time it's just like externally you're kind of out of control, and then like any little thing someone says or does can snap. That's not always the case. Sometimes there's a justified reason that's other person is doing something to trigger you. Sure, this is not talking about those times, Someone came up, punched me in the face, and looked like, how do I feel? That's me. Maybe I. You know what I mean? Like, right? There are times where that doesn't apply, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the times that it does apply. Another thing I want to mention is like that what you say. I want to give you credit. It's something that you taught me. You strike while the iron is cold, right? So when the kids are going bonkers and they're emotionally hijacked, There's nothing you can do. You can only make it worse. You can only make them hate you more. You can only damage the relationship, right? Be the bigger person. Control your emotions. Weather the storm. Don't allow inappropriate behavior. Tell them they can't talk to you that way. You know, I know I had an issue with Eve was being aggressive and like punching and kicking and stuff.
That's our youngest.
Yeah. And I just grabbed her and hugged her and squeezed her. And she was just like kicking, punching, going crazy. And I just let her burn out, you know, like just burn through that energy. And I'm not going to allow her to hurt anybody else in the family or hurt herself. So I just let her burn out. And then once we come to an agreement, she's burnt out, I let her go and we're fine. Because while I'm holding her, I'm telling her, it's okay. I love you. She's like, let me go. I go, I can't because you're going to hurt someone or yourself. She's like, let go. I hate you. And it's hard, you know, because I'm restraining.
Yeah.
But what am I meant to do? Like, I can't let her attack everyone. But in the end, when the iron is cold, has all the respect for me, doesn't hate me for restraining her, and we could talk through it and respectful. I didn't make anything worse. You know, I explained it's for her safety and everyone's really strike while the iron is cold.
Yeah.
But you can't just let them do whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah. Because she's like our beautiful little firecracker. And she would tend to, I've thought about this actually, because she's the youngest, she's experienced and experiencing an older sibling, which our oldest never had. So that's like the dynamic, but also it's her personality style, right? And actually she's a lot more like you, and our oldest is a lot, like if you look at them, their personality style, their temperament, it's like chalk and cheese. But also she would go to scratch her brother. She would go to attack him. Like that's what
0 to 100.
0 to 100. That's what we know we're protecting not only him from, but her as well. Because we know, this is the thing we're talking about with emotional hijack. We know that when she's regulated and her brain is switched on and she's in, you know, herself, she would never, ever, ever want to actually hurt him, right? She loves him and they love playing together, but it's when you become...
And then there's regret.
Yeah, it's
they regret what they did.
Absolutely.
You know?
So, like, it's so... If we didn't know this stuff, well, when I didn't know it, which is when our oldest was born, like, I smacked him. I would get he would like not eat his peas, or he would like not get in the car. Like we smacked. And that was because I had no emotional intelligence and I got emotionally hijacked. And I had those stories of like, you can't speak to me like that. And I'm your mother and get in the car. We have to be there. Now I'm like, more chill, but I understand what's going on. So I don't get to that level as much.
I think just to bring this back around with what we want to talk about is like what we wish we knew when we were parents.
Yeah.
Kind of realizing that it's temporary, that you can be hijacked, you can be tired. Understanding yourself and what's going on and being in control will allow us to deal with the situation a lot better. That would be the number one thing I would recommend. Like, I'm not really the type of person who likes to give advice and say, you need to have your kid in bed by and then you need to feed him this time, this many days. I want to give you like a broader brush to paint with, so then you can take that and paint whatever you want to paint or do whatever you want to do, right? Tailor it to your family, your household, your situation, and you're able to do that when you're in control. When you're in control, you can do what you want to do and the way you want to do it. So I think if I knew that when we were first had kids, not that it was extremely terrible, but there were days and moments, communicate with yourself, understand, catch yourself early, find out what's going on, and being able to express that to your partner. And sometimes your partner won't be receptive to it, but the more you do it and the more you can control the emotions, which means you're controlling the situation, which means it makes it easier to handle all these other external forces, which is like a stressed or difficult partner and the kid going crazy. But it all starts with EQ internally, so you can control that and then you can control everything else. So if you can master that or get a hold of that early from parenting, I reckon it'll be easier for you to implement your own parenting strategies along the way.
That was really good. Have you guys got some insights or some takeaways? Like, even just like one gold nugget. Sometimes I find if you listen to something or watch something and something has the penny drop moment for you, then like that's worth it.
It does take it took a while for the penny to drop for me. So maybe these conversations can help others. And hey, guys, we want this to do well and to reach the right people. So if you can like and share it, that's going to help us out a lot.
if you can, I'm going to ask like a favor. If you can just think of like one person in your circles, like a family or a friend or someone that you think they might like this, or they might find something out of it, they might get something out of it.
Yeah.
If you can share it, like share the link, or just like tag them in it or something if it's on social media, that would
Even
be
if
awesome.
even if they disagree with us, you know, even if it's something they don't normally watch, and they think we're full of it, that's, you know, good feedback. Let them write it down in the comments what they disagree with. I'm fine with that.
So he's fine with that.
Yeah.
I would be like, oh no, they hate us.
Nah. There's negative
It's fine.
feedback, and then there's constructive feedback. So as long as it's like your hair looks stupid, well, or your head looks stupid, there's not much I can do about that. But if you disagree with something that's constructive, I love it.
Yeah.
You can look into it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we said this in the last one. Ask us questions. Like, you can comment underneath the video on YouTube. Ask a question. And we see it. You can also send us an email. My email's linked to my podcast, and it's hello@stephaniepinto.com. And anywhere on the socials, like, he's not on socials, but I am. I'm under Stephanie Pinto, or if you're on Instagram, then I'm at emotionally.intelligent.parent. So send us stuff. Like, we want to actually answer questions and talk about stuff you guys want to hear about.
And anything you disagree with what I said, challenge me. I like it.
Okay.
Send it through.